Hi guys, and welcome to this week's video tutorial. This will be the second board in the dubious positions and how to attack them by Grandmaster Zhang Qiang and Master Yang Wenqing. So let us begin. Same direction cannons. Red will play the rank chariot, and black will counter with the foul chariot. So the basic opening system is now defined. The same direction cannons, rank chariot versus foul chariot. Now in this board, black could choose to play h2+1 to the h file. Now this is one of the very old counters or methods of playing the position by black. Now this is now not so commonly seen. Instead, usually HRA+4 for the chariot to patrol the riverbank or play A6+5 to consolidate the central file is played. Now the reason why this move fell out of favor was that because this horse was developed as a edge horse, the central file would be considerably weakened, and this would have many implications, especially in cannon versus cannon opening systems, because for their first move, both colors would have moved a central cannon and would now be applying pressure on the central file for each other. Now, this is a very important key point that we must all remember when making plans to play the game. So, if black made this move, red will immediately harass the cannon, and the chariot cannot protect the cannon, for the red cannon would simply capture it. So usually, black would move c2+2. And red will continue his harassment and prevent the cannon from crossing over here. And black would not play p1+1. Now it would seem that red would have wasted the initiative, advancing and retreating 2 moves, and allowed black to consolidate his defense. Unfortunately, black's position was already a dubious position, and the weaknesses inside this formation would be too much for black to handle. Now at this point, red would entice black to play c2=3 by developing his left horse as a proper horse. Now this horse would also consolidate his defense or his central file, and if black did not capture this horse or attack this horse would become a major turning point in the game afterwards. Now this would be the recommended move. It would not be a good idea for red to try to mount an attack from the edge file, because black would capture it, red would trade material, and red would simply capture it and sacrifice his horse. And once the cannon moved, black's own cannon rank would be in peril, as red would now advance the cannon to attack the horse. Black is usually will protect the horse in this manner. If he retreated the horse, red would simply capture the central cannon, and black would be in even more trouble. Red would continue with RA+4, and black would try to counter. This would be the crucial move, c2-6 to protect the central file. Now this would be from one of the ancient manuals. If black tried to play r1=2, black would gladly capture the horse, trade material, and once the horse was out of the way, the central pawn would not be protected. Red would immediately capture the central pawn and play r6=4 for the iron ball checkmate. Black cannot resolve this checkmate and will lose very quickly. So that is why r1=2 would be a terrible mistake. So c2-6 to protect the central file would be a crucial move. But red would simply play r4+3, offering a trade of material, and black would simply sacrifice his horse in retaliation and advance his chariot. Now both colors would have their scruples, but red would have issues with this cannon, and red would still be unable to capture the central pawn. So black would still have a playable game, although red would have the slight advantage. So that is why if an attack from the central on the edge file is not so commonly seen nowadays. Instead, it would have been better for red to try to entice black to capture it. So at this point, this the position of discussion. At this point, there are two variations. The first of which would be c2 equals to 3, whereby black would fall for red's trap and really attack the red horse. The other would be a6 plus 5, whereby black would try to consolidate his defense before venturing further. So in variation A, c2 equals to 3. Let us see what would happen if black was greedy and tried to attack the horse. Again, as mentioned in one of the earlier variations, because the cannon head was now attacking, he had left his defensive defensive duties, and this opened up the cannon rank for red to attack. Again, red will attack the horse and threaten to capture the central pawn. Now, once the cannon was at this place, there was not much you can do. You cannot move back, or this will result in loss of tempo and the material. And red was prepared to play p7 plus 1 at any time now. So basically, red was be forced to capture the horse. Red would gladly sacrifice the horse in this manner. So it would not be a good idea for black to play ra plus 2, because red would immediately develop his other chariot, and black would now, the chariots will now be all over the place, and similar attacks to trade the cannon for the black horse, followed by capturing the central pawn, would be applied, and it would be very, very hard for black to try to resist red's attack. Hence, black would be forced to capture the horse. Red will gladly trade material, and of course, this sacrifice must be compensated by capturing the central pawn. Black could play a4 plus 5. He cannot capture, because this would be immediate checkmate. So a6 plus 5, and the poor positioning of this cannon would allow red to exploit by playing r9 plus 2 to threaten the cannon. Now this move must be made, because black would try to retreat the cannon to try to trade cannons, hoping to relieve some pressure, but it would be too late, because red would now attempt the eyeball checkmate, forcing the king out, and this would be one of the kills shown in the ancient manuals. Red would sacrifice his chariot, delivering a check. Now a5 plus 4 is usually played. If black tried to move his king to safety, red would capture the advisor for free and retreat his chariot, threatening to capture the central advisor. Now if black must make this move to guard this line. If he played c5 equals to 3, black would play c3 equals to 5 and still threaten to capture the advisor, and once the last advisor was caught, it would be game over for black. C5 equals to 6, and red would now deliver a check. Black would cross check. Red would up his defenses, but at this point in time, red would now play c4 minus 5, preparing to attack, preparing to play r6 equals to 4 to attack, and there will be many tactical combinations. He could gain material, etc., etc. So again, red will be assured of victory in this situation. So r6 plus 1 is not viable, but neither would capturing the red chariot be, because now red will switch the direction of his attack with r6 equals to 4 to deliver a check, forcing the cannon to be sacrificed. And then red will make this very beautiful move of r4 plus 1, completely limiting any or severing any escape routes for the black king. The advisor cannot be moved, or the cannon will be delivering a check. So Black will try to trade cannons, but it will simply move out of the way and still threaten with c3 equals to 5. Black tries to block, but the cannon is not advanced again, and at this point it will be impossible for black to prevent red's c3 equals to 5 checkmate. So this would be variation A. In variation B, black would up his defenses and refuse to give up this line so early so that red cannot play c8 plus 5, but the damage has been done and red will still come up tops. Because the cannon did not play c2 equals to 3, red is given a chance to develop this pawn and thus his horse. So black would try to hinder or slow down the development of or prevent h7 plus 6 from happening. Now, this move would also serve the purpose of adjusting the formation, whereby black would try to link his elephants at the central file for added defense. However, red will now start his assault from the edge file by playing p9+1, offering a trade of pawns. Now, this was the perfect time to do so. Red must apply lots of pressure and not allow black to slow the pace of the game down and consolidate his defense. Otherwise, red's earlier efforts would have been wasted. So, after trading pawns, now the chariot will be moved to the riverbank and red will be prepared to capture the cannon. If the horse captures the chariot, black will lose this other chariot. So, red would be preparing to capture the cannon to gain material. Now, this would be another point of. At this point, there were two black variations that were discussed. The first would be c2 plus 2, the other would be p3 plus 1. So if c2 plus 2 were played, instead of playing p3 plus 1, if black chose a more aggressive or proactive approach, he could play p5 plus 1. p3 plus 1 is also viable, but the pace of the game would be much slower, but red would have more control over the situation. This would be more commonly seen with careful players. So if p5 plus 1 were played, black would try to consolidate his defense in anticipation of an attack by red from the central file. Red would again play p5 plus 1, hoping to trade pawns, and black would try to slow down red's offensive by pinning the pawn and chariot in this manner. Now, it would not be a good idea for black to play p5 plus 1 because red would now change his target to the black cannon and then capture the pawn and have an overwhelming advantage because red would have controlled all the major important lines, and the horses are free to go, and red would have pinned black's right flank with one piece, or two pieces, sorry. We have pinned four major pieces of black over here. Things would look very rosy for black at this point. So RA plus 4 was black's attempt to slow down or slow the pace of red's attack. But red would have other ideas, and he would play r9 equals to 8. Now this is a very powerful move because not only would red double down his pressure on this flank, he would also be threatening to capture the cannon. Now again, if the chariot moved, red would simply capture it and gain material. So black would try his best to play c2 equals to 3 or try to move his cannon to safety. But at this time, the red horse would now be ready to go. Now, black cannot afford to ignore the threat of the central pawn and choose to play, let's say, cannot afford to ignore this pawn. And let's say if he tried a proactive counter with c3 equals to 7, red will simply ignore the presence or the threat of this cannon and even sacrifice his elephant for an attack on the central file. trading chariots. Black could retreat his chariot, giving up his elephant, but as can be seen at this point in time, Black's right chariot has yet to be developed, and it will be very difficult for Black to resist Red's attack. The horse and cannon are all ready to go, and in particular, this horse would now become a major threat. He could go for the elbow horse, etc., etc. So that is why, c3 equals to 7 is not a viable move, and instead p5+1 was advocated. But after playing p5+1, Red could play p3+1. And at this point in time, we can see that Red would have controlled the entire game and have the overwhelming advantage. Black would have a hard time trying to develop material on his right flank, and this would usually translate into a winning position for Red. So let us go to variation BB, whereby Black tried to resist Red's attack with a relatively tenacious counter. This would also perhaps be Black's best bet in this situation. Red will capture the pawn, and Red will now play c2+2, preparing to play c2 equals to 3 to attack the chariot and the elephant. Red, as always, would not even bother and choose to attack from the central file. Now, there are two variations that were discussed. The first would be c2 equals to 3, and the second would be to consolidate the defense with e7+5 and hoping that this elephant could capture the red chariot. So let us see what would happen if e7+5 were played. Now this is not a viable move because Red would simply move his chariot to safety. Black would try to gain material. Red would offer a trade of material. Now Black would try to defend very aggressively. Now in this situation, Black cannot afford to defend passively, let's say with c2-5, or trying to move his cannon to safety, because if he did, again, Red would attack the cannon rank, be prepared to play r6+3, etc. to block the elephants and to capture the central elephant. And even though the cannon was targeting, Red would simply play h3-5 to develop his horse from this side of the board. And again, Black's entire right flank was under heavy attack, and Red would have a significant advantage. c2-4 to double down his defense on the cannon rank would also not work. Again, Red would attack the central file. Black tries to capture material, e3+5, the length of the material, and Red would now charge his pawn forward, and this pawn will become a major threat because on the next move he will be prepared to capture the elephant and continue his attack on the central file. Hence, c2-4 or c2-5 would not be viable. Now, c2 equals to 3 would perhaps be the most tenacious defense that Black can afford at this point. So e7+9 to prevent capture. 1 equals to 2, p7+1. Now the elephant cannot capture, or Red would be applying immediate fork on both the Black cannons. So Black tries his best to attack and play ra+6, hoping to gain some compensation by applying pressure on this flank. But Red would not bother, and after capturing the pawn, Red will now move his horse to the central file, be prepared to play, let's say, h5+4, etc. to attack. Now, both colors are attacking, but it is quite reasonably obvious that Red would have the advantage. So that is why e7+5 is not a viable option. But would c2 equals to 3b? Let us see. Again, Red would move the chariot to safety. Black would now capture the elephant. It would appear that Black was successful in capturing an elephant for a counter attack. But unfortunately, once the dust settled down, Black will find that this lone cannon cannot do much without any reinforcements. And instead, because it was trapped, it will now be positioned alone in enemy territory and very susceptible to capture by red. Instead, R1 equals to 2 to develop the chariot to gain an open line would have been a better option. But okay, after delivering a check, but let's see what would happen. Black tries to consolidate his defenses. Again, red attacks from central file. Black tries to slow down, and red will play h3 plus 5, preparing or pretending that he was going to attack the central file. In reality, all these moves were set up in order to capture this black cannon. Okay, let's say black captured the central pawn, retreat, and as can be seen, there will be no place for the cannon to go. Let's say black tried to trade material. Again, black would be able to defend in the nick of time. Black would be able to defend in the nick of time, and link his cannons up. So we can see that red would now have 2 chariots, 2 horses, 2 cannons, but black would be bound to lose the cannon, and for his efforts, red would still maintain an attack on the central file. Now, red would have a significant advantage. So, a quick recap as black. Let us switch to board. Okay, same direction cannons. Red's rank chariot versus black's file chariot variation. Oh, sorry, and red will develop both horses, and this would be the dubious move in this position because the edge horse was simply too far away from the center, which was the title of the board given. And red would immediately harass, retreat, forcing p2, and then play h8 plus 7 to develop both horses as a proper horse. Now, he cannot play p9 plus 1, otherwise black would be given a chance back into the game. Now, 2 variations. Variation A, c2 equals to 3, black would fall for, we will be greedy and fall into red's trap. Immediately red attacks the horse, and again, as mentioned earlier, black cannot do much but capture the horse, and black will take out the other horse, attack the central file, and the other chariot will now move into action for the final kill, threatening to checkmate with the iron bolt. Checkmate, sacrificing the chariot. Check, and basically this would be the end. And black could try to hold on a little bit, but simply red's cannon would move around very deftly and still manage to threaten to checkmate with the double cannons checkmate. In variation B, black could play a6 plus 5 to try to consolidate his defenses. And since c2 equals 3 was not played, red will play p7 plus 1. Black could try to adjust his formation. And red would mount an attack from the central file. And this would force the cannon away. This would be variation BA, whereby black would choose to play c2 plus 2. b5 plus 1, consolidating the defenses, but red will continue his attack from the central file. And black tries to slow down red's attack, but red would simply not hit and play r9 equals to 8 instead. And the red house will be now ready to go. Black cannot afford to ignore this pawn and decided to trade pawns. But in doing so, red will be allowed to develop his other horse by playing p3+1, and as can be seen, red's pieces are in the open and black's pieces are underdeveloped and closed. In variation BB, p3+1, it would be perhaps black's most tenacious counter. 6 goes to 7, c2 goes to 3 for a fork, and unfortunately, although red would gain an elephant and even deliver a check, but this move would basically be useless because black would not have any reinforcements available for the black cannon to attack to cause an effective attack. a6+5. Again, black tries to slow down red's attack, but the horse will now be moved and prepared to attack. h5+4 is a very powerful move. Black cannot afford, so he played p5+1, but at this point in time, red suddenly changed his target and played r9 equals to 4, forcing the cannon away, and red would then retreat his other cannon. Black tries to find some compensation by sacrificing the pawn. Unfortunately, red will be able to link his cannons up in time for very powerful defense. Now, if the black cannon captured the pawn, the horse will capture it. So, as can be seen, at this point in time, red would have the overwhelming majority, and all of black's troubles stem from h2+1 very early in the game, because as can be seen from all these variations, the center was weak. Red would exploit it, and the reason why it was split was because there was only one horse protecting the central pawn. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this video this week. I've been under the weather recently, and sorry for the thick voice. So if you like the work that I've been doing, please do subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up. Thank you.